Instead of one church trying to do it all, it is so tempting as pastors to say, ooh, there's a great idea, let's do it. Ooh, there's a great idea, let's do it. Ooh, let's do that. And before we know it, we're not doing anything well.
No two churches are exactly alike, kind of like people. Sure, they have some similarities, but they have different personalities, different ministry settings, different structural processes. Imagine, though, if they found common ground, they could do more together than each individual faith community could do alone. Gem City Church Collective is a family of churches, reaching people in exciting ways, making disciples of Jesus Christ, and they still manage to have some fun along the way. Today, our guests, Reverend Brian Law and Reverend Rosario Picardo, will share more. One of the reasons that we came to Kettering today was to talk to you about the Gem City Collective. Explain that, because not everybody knows what a Gem City Collective is.
So the Gem City Church Collective is a collection of kind of a family of churches. We have like mind. We're not all the same. That's part of what makes it so beautiful, is that we have different expressions of how we do church and how we try to reach out to the communities that God has placed us in. So right now we're a family of 5 different churches of different sizes, different socioeconomic backgrounds. We just felt like it was really better to be together rather than everybody just trying to do their own thing. What would it look like if we came together and kind of joined forces on some strategic areas in order to reach people for Jesus?
So what does that look like?
I would say a metaphor that I love to use too, to go along with that, is how my daughters, I have 3 daughters, 6, 4, and soon to be 3, how they have similar, the same DNA, but they have different personalities in the way they live it out. And so you'll see with the Gem City Church Collective, there's similar DNA and values. So we're missional. We believe in generosity and serving, and of course our Wesleyan heritage, but it's lived out in a different way, as Brian mentioned. And so this campus that we're at here today, Christ Church Kettering, is 70 years old, right?
Almost 75.
Almost 75 years old. So it is really unique for a church that is 75 years old to have given birth when it did in its life cycle. But this church particularly is gifted in the area of discipleship, and really the people here just serve galore. And anytime there's a need, they're willing to meet the need financially as well.
Yeah, very generous, very generous.
That's how it's played out here. And then Mosaic, we're a multi-ethnic church. And so we have the similar values, but again, lived out differently, where we're not only multi-ethnic, multi-generational, multi-income. And so I always say that we're blue collar, fewer white collar, and then some no collar. And so if you go to kind of that Springboro, Centerville area, where the point is, it's a different congregation and group that they're reaching out to as well, that they're meeting the needs, and they're heavy in service in the community. And they're doing a wonderful job. And then you have First Phil Am that meets here at the Kettering campus, and it's Filipino congregation, but Anglos that are joining as well. And so they're becoming more multi-ethnic. I think they're trying to move the needle that way, but you'll hear songs in their heart language of Tagalog, and just a great time. And there's a meal after each service, so that's unique. And then, of course, we have Refresh Springfield, which is a dinner church. So, I mean, you have the different contexts, you have ways of serving that are going to be unique and different as well. But then we come together for one purpose. And of course, it's to make disciples of Jesus Christ. And so, but it's lived out, just differently, as it would be with my 3 girls in our family structure.
And the reason we named it the Gem City Church Collective is simply Gem City is a nickname for Dayton. It was a nickname penned, many, many years ago. And so we thought, well, we'll just identify it with Dayton. That doesn't mean that every church in the collective has to be in the Dayton region, but it's just an identifiable name.
So talk to me a little bit about the collective. Like, obviously you came up with the name because of the city of Dayton, but a collective, why these 5 churches? or these 5 expressions of church. And what is the collective?
So it really started pretty organically. As Roz alluded to, Christ Kettering birthed The Point, and that was almost 15 years ago. And so it kind of started to insert into its DNA this idea of multiplication, that we felt like a church in multiple locations can reach more people for the kingdom. And so that then kind of started to build into our DNA that we should be a church that continually multiplies. And so as this idea a few years ago of what a mosaic would look like, a mosaic of followers of Jesus that look different and have different backgrounds, and that was just a normal thing. And so we felt like that was just the next logical step. It almost started to take on a mind of its own as we started having some folks come to us and say, "We like what you're doing. Can we be a part of it?" And so really by necessity, we had to start organizing this thing where it was just multiple churches and we were kind of just sharing some things. We needed to put some organization and really put some systems in place to make sure that this not only was organized well, but was efficient.
So tell us a little bit about that organization. What does that look like?
A lot of it has to do with shared services. Because we believe we're better together, we believe that why recreate the wheel? Why have every campus have its own redundancy of services? So for things as simple as the business office, someone to take care of the income and the outflow of resources. Why not share that? And so that's something we share. Communications is another thing that we share. And then it even goes as simple as we as pastors meet periodically and we share sermon resources. And even when, one of us gets a little bit stuck on a sermon, we reach out to the other and say, "Hey, can you help me out here a little bit?" So it can be as simple as just sharing resources intentionally to as complex as sharing HR systems and financial systems and things like that. So, Roz, what would you add?
Yeah, I would say it's more of like a decentralized model versus having a mothership that directs everything. Some different models of church have that and what you'd call more of a traditional multi-site model. But we look at ourselves more as a local dives. And so how can we be indigenous to our community? So one of my favorite restaurants is Lily's downtown Dayton. And so they have a rotating menu. You never know what you're going to get. And I feel that's what the Gem City Church Collective has to offer is some of that spontaneity. However, we're not franchising every single thing in terms of you have to do it our way or this way. And so the campuses have freedom, but then there are some of the non-negotiables we do have around finance practices, safe sanctuaries, and those types of things. But it's really tapping into everybody's creativity and how we can really be able to show mutuality and learn from one another. As Brian mentioned, we do this in sermons as pastors, but also in student ministry as well, especially in a post-COVID world where student ministry has just been decimated among churches. When we do events, we're bringing 5 churches together with their students to go sledding or to do different activities versus just having, a minimal amount. So we're getting some critical mass. So that's like the students, I think, model it the best in how we've been able to go about it. And we're starting to come up with more ideas and ways that we can come together.
And I would think that, too, there would be a benefit in many ways. Not only would students get to know other students from other schools, but in some cases, events might be cheaper because you're taking more people and therefore able to offer discounts maybe.
Instead of planning 5 different, fall retreats, you're planning one and you're putting energy into having excellence in one.
Which is also a good investment in terms of staff time.
Absolutely.
So that pastors can concentrate on other areas of ministry. And
I think one of the huge benefits that I see, so, if you were to take a snapshot of each one of our campuses, we are really different. So like, for instance, Christ Church that is very, very white, very middle upper class, because we are able to do ministry with Mosaic, a church that is multi-ethnic, multiracial. It pushes us. I mean, it's no longer like, well, we are who we are. We now are being pushed to say, how can we reach out to different cultures? How do we reach out in a multi-ethnic way? And I think it's great growth for us. So it keeps us out of the status quo. And I think it's vice versa for Mosaic. Mosaic, being a new church, can learn from the established church that there are systems that need to be in place in order to function well, not to slow ministry down, but to actually help propel ministry into the future. So I think there's all that, as Roz says, that mutuality, that commonality, but also leveraging our differences, which makes a huge difference.
I love what you said about not to slow ministry down, but to propel ministry forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Ross, tell us a little bit about Mosaic, because I've had the fortune of being the opportunity, I should say, of being at many of the different parts of the collective. And one of the things that I took away from the last time was the incredible worship service, recovery worship. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was definitely, it was birthed out of seeing the need in Dayton, especially as being one of the overdose capitals of the world. Unfortunately, that has been our label. And so we have strategic partnerships with recovery homes. I just felt a nudge. We needed to start a recovery service. And so Finding Chance Recovery was born. It's less than 2 years old, and we wanted to eliminate barriers for people. So the meal time in feeding 150 to 200 people can be challenging, but we have a meal time, and then we have childcare as well. So there's no excuse for folk. They can come and have those things provided for them so they can enjoy worship and not have to worry about going home to eat or, being late or whatnot. And so that is definitely an awesome time of fellowship where Jesus is present at the table, we believe. And then we have our spiritual food with the service, and that is oriented in a few different ways. We have a recovery testimony or a lead story, or at times there's just a teaching on the steps or a panel discussion. And then there is the Serenity Prayer that we share in, and then clean time shout outs. So it's definitely been one of the pillars of Mosaic and a vibrant community. Look forward to see what happens in the future, but we've had people reaching out to us and other churches just around the connection, wondering, how do I start this kind of recovery service? And so it's definitely a recipe that we feel God's cooked up.
Well, it's interesting too, the reaction from people, the cheerleading for each other, being able to stand up and say something. I remember the night that I was there, a woman stood up and said she had been clean for, I think it was a year and a few days. And then she kind of reached over and smacked the guy beside her and said, and he got his driver's license back. And everybody cheered.
Yep.
And I thought, wouldn't it be fabulous if we could go into any of our churches and people be that vulnerable and that excited about the goodness that was going on in their life, and watching people interact with each other. And, different things happen during that service too. People stand up, they sit down, they talk to people. I mean, even while other things are going on the stage. So I think being able to see that type of worship is really incredibly powerful. And it doesn't fit into the little box of, this is the way we do church, and this is what's acceptable, and this is what's not acceptable.
They don't know how to act in terms of like what's quote unquote church acceptability. And for them, that's their service. So we don't say, all right, come back to Sunday morning for a real church service. That's their expression. And we don't want to take that away from them. That's how we're going to see renewal in the life of the church, when you have marginalized groups coming together and being able to live out their faith.
But then to have a church like Christ Kettering that says, we have the resources, we can help make ministry happen in other communities. That's pretty amazing. One of the other churches in the collective is First Philam.
Mm-hmm.
And I love anybody who has access to social media. You have to go watch their devotions every night. I think it's Monday through Friday, isn't it? That they have
Family devotions.
Family devotions. They'll be in the car driving down the road and they're praising God and singing songs. They'll have, I mean, it's really incredible. And it's another one of those experiences that had I not heard about the collective, I would have never known about it. But I love the enthusiasm and the excitement for ministry, and they talk back to the people online. It's really incredible. Brian, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, one of the things that Pastor Nitos and his family have really established for themselves is a worldwide social media ministry, which again was just organic. We didn't set out to say, hey, let's do a worldwide campus as a part of First Philam. But Pastor Nitos, during the pandemic, they started doing family devotions because we couldn't meet in person. Through the power of Facebook, through the power of boosting, he reaches, literally reaches millions of people every month from literally all over the world. And he knows them by name. He's able to interact with them. And so there are some, especially in America, they consider First Philam their church. And it's beautiful. I mean, he's driven to the East Coast to do baptisms. I mean, someone drove up from Texas to join the church. It's unreal, the excitement that they have just around social media, and something as simple as a family devotion that has turned into something that God has just mushroomed into this incredible ministry.
It really is something to behold. I mean, one of the things I love about it too is you'll see people's prayer concerns pop up. They'll say, and they're so good at acknowledging each person. So on one hand, they're looking at the camera, but they're looking to see who signed on. And so they would be like, "Oh, Brian from Kettering. Oh, thanks for joining us. Chris from Bath. It's so nice to see you again." And it's so funny when they say your name, because it caught me off guard. It's the first time I've ever had somebody say my name on a video that's on Facebook or on Facebook Live. And it was just hilarious to feel like I don't even know these people, but yet I feel like I know them. And they're heading close to 1,000 days in a row that they've done.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Since pandemic.
Yeah. So I think it's Monday through Friday. I can't remember exactly what time it is now, but
it's 9 p.m.
Thank you. Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. First Philam.
Yeah. First Philam Church of Greater Dayton.
It's worth your time to go on and watch and be a part of that family devotion time.
Well, and something I'll say to kind of connect it back to the collective, instead of one church trying to do it all, like a church trying, it is so tempting as pastors to say, "Ooh, there's a great idea, let's do it. Ooh, there's a great idea, let's do it. Ooh, let's do that." And before we know it, we're not doing anything well. And so the beauty of the collective is that we can live into who we are. So instead of Christ Church having a recovery service, we can, at least for the foreseeable future, send them to Mosaic because they have a vibrant community there. Why would we at this moment recreate the wheel? Now, if there's a need, it goes in reverse. We reach out to Mosaic, our brothers and sisters, and say, "Hey, we feel like God's leading us to start. How do we do it?" And then they're going to be able to walk right alongside of us versus, in something else. If we need some help with, how do we deal with social media and how do we draw people in? I mean, all we have to do is go to Pastor Nitos. And so again, the beauty of the collective is we're not all doing the same thing, and we're also not in competition with one another. We're all trying to reach different people in different ways for the sake of the kingdom.
For the same reason. Just
for the same reason, absolutely.
So when you get all of the pastors together and you I'm assuming you would spend time in prayer for each other and prayer for the ministries of the different churches and the communities that you serve. Tell us a little bit more about what's that look like? You have a board of directors, I understand.
So we have the Gem City Collective Board, which is kind of the board over all of the different churches. And then they make really the big decisions about budgets and lead pastor, like my position, stuff like that. But then each of the local churches has a lead team that really operates in the day-to-day when it comes to specific staff hires, specific ways to allocate their budgets. How do they reach their community in ways that are just for them? So the structure seems to be working well. It's almost like kind of like a board of trustees is what the Gem City Collective Board acts like. They try really hard not to get in the weeds, but helps us think strategically about, do we bring on new campuses? What about adoptions? What about new strategic areas for ministry? So it helps them to not get in the kind of day-to-day weeds of the local church.
You used the word adoption. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's, relationship between two churches, and one is vital and the other one has had vital days and years in the past. And so they come together. And we use the term adoption is because you're welcoming that congregation that is maybe past their years into relationship with you. So when you're adopted into a family, you take on a new last name, a history, and you're adopted into new ways of living out family life. And so we recently did that with St. Andrew United Methodist Church, who could have really had a few more years left, but under the great leadership of Pastor Alanthe Ward and going through a revitalization process, realized that joining the collective and specifically Mosaic, they would be able to grow to new levels. And so that is a model I think we'll probably see more of in the future versus just mergers where you're merging unhealth with unhealth. You tend to actually have the average size of the largest congregation at the end. So you're not really moving the needle any. But with an adoption, the hope is that larger church is a healthier church, and then you can pool your resources together to be able to reach the neighborhood in the given area.
So it sounds like you have a number of churches. You have 5 or faith communities that gather. So, and you all sound like you all have a passion for the ministry that you're leading. So why do I have this vision of trying to herd cats? Like, how do you get all these people who are so excited about ministry and not become a group of people who think, oh, there's one, we'll do that ministry. We'll do that ministry, like you said, Brian, earlier. How do you stay focused?
Well, you use the term herding cats. I use that term a lot. Because that seems to be what we do, especially, even with the 5 local congregations that we do have as a part of the collective. It's a lot like herding cats. And it would be very easy for us to look at opportunities and just go for all of them. We have had a level of success, and we want to be careful we don't take that for granted. So having the Gem City Collective Board, a group of non-staff lay people, high-functioning lay people who are entrepreneurs, can look at us and say, you might want to push the brakes on that one a little bit. And so we have accountability around us, which is super important, because entrepreneurs will want to go for everything, and it eventually could cause us to be upside down financially, upside down ministry-wise. We may not have enough pastors to serve the local congregations. And so it takes a lot of prayer. It takes a lot of strategic thinking and taking a breath sometimes and saying, well, we need to consider that, because even in recent years, we've said no to a couple of things where we, on the surface, boy, it looks great. But as we started to think about it, dig down a little bit deeper, it was like, not now. It was a not now sort of thing.
If one of our listeners today has been inspired by something that they heard, where could they get more information?
We have a collective website, gemcitychurch.org, that you can visit there. It'll tell you a little bit about each campus. We're working to kind of beef that up a little bit and be able to tell stories a little bit more. But that'll also connect to each of the different websites of each of our different campuses. And of course, they could reach out to us. Either one of us. It's Brian at ChristUMC, UnitedMethodistChurch.org.
Or mine is Roz at wearemosaic.org.
Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time out of your day to tell us more about this. As I said earlier, visiting the first time was incredible. Visiting the second time is even more inspiring, because there's been a little bit of time that has lapsed between those visits, but yet your enthusiasm, your excitement for ministry is palpable. You get me excited about wanting to get back out into the local church and do more ministry and find even my own way, maybe that I can reach people for Jesus. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Kay.
Thank you for listening to At the Table in Studio 32. Episodes are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If this episode has touched and inspired you, tell a friend and share it with those who may benefit from listening. If you know of someone we should feature on this program, please contact us at westohioumc@gmail.com. We'll see you next time at the table.